Good morning, everyone. My name is Cedric Mitchell. I'm Deputy Director for Community Engagement, and it's my pleasure to have you all here today. We are so excited that you're going to join us for the Outdoor Equity Program. This technical assistance workshop will, by the end, give you enough information that you'll be an expert. But before we get started, I'd like to have the team introduce themselves, and you'll meet the team who's going to be behind the scenes and in front and providing the presentation. So why don't we start with you, Victor?
Thank you, Cedric. Good morning, everyone. I'm Victor Patino, the Program Manager. We're excited to have you today, and we do hope you enjoy the webinar, and we look forward to your questions today. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Kyle Bolin. I am one of the Competitive Review Project Officers here at the Office of Grants and Local Services, and I'll be presenting today, and hope you guys really enjoy the workshop. Thank you.
Hi. Good morning, everyone. I'm Christine Schill, Project Officer here with OGALS. Thank you so much for joining us today for the OEP webinar. In addition to all of the presenters here, we have quite a bit of folks on the back end making sure everything runs smoothly. So we have Noelle Breitenbach, Nikki Lambert, Adele Valdez, Megan Harrison, Natalie B., and Sam Godot. So thank you so much again for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Christine. And again, welcome everyone. We're very excited to have you all here today because this particular program, the Outdoor Equity Program, is pretty unique in that it's going to be providing, instead of capital projects, it's going to be providing programmatic opportunities. One of the things that we ask people when they come to this workshop is that they begin by thinking with a blank slate. We know that you may have ideas of exactly what you want to do and how you want to go after these dollars, but it's very important that you make certain that the program that you're going to provide is one that's going to be matching what the grant program will do. So that means coming in with the idea that you're going to make sure that you're the kind of program you want to present is something that's going to be very competitive. By the end of this presentation, you'll understand how to be competitive, and also you'll understand the resources that are going to be available to you. But this is a unique and wonderful opportunity for us to do something extraordinary here in California, and perhaps lead the nation again in how we engage with communities around the state. The OEP program, which we'll refer to it for the rest of this program, was inspired by AB 209, which was in the legislature this last year. Again, we will speak to it as OEP program for short. The OEP is a unique $57 million funding opportunity for programs and services to increase the ability of residents in underserved communities in participating in outdoor experiences at state parks and other public lands. The first thing I need to make clear is that construction projects are not eligible. These funds are for program operations only. Grants will fund outdoor programs connecting Californians to the natural world, developing future environmental leaders, and creating lasting legacies in communities. 10 focus groups and 4 public hearings with over 200 participants plus 2 public comment periods help refine the final application guide, and we will look forward to going through the guide with you today. Before we start, I want you to be aware of a few key approaches in this program. For example, programs that include a series of activities are what we call multi-touch and span over a year. Those programs will be more competitive than proposing a one-day event. For purposes of this program, you will learn about using a community home-based approach. The presenters will describe this in more detail today, but here's a summary of how to plan for this unique funding opportunity. Each separate grant application will identify a community home base in an underserved community that needs access to outdoor programs. The community home base will become the central gathering place in that community for this program. Examples of the central gathering place for this program could be a school, a community center, or a community park. This central gathering place will be called the community home base. Second, you will plan activities and trips from the community home base to nature areas. For example, activities in the community could include teaching school students about the community's environment, etc. And trips from the community home base to natural areas could include a beach, lake, desert, or forest in a state or national park. As a recap, you will establish a home base in an underserved community, which can be a school or community center, for example. Then your agency or partners will organize educational activities in the community and organize trips from the community home base to natural areas. There's also another benefit to this approach. And right now, I'd just like to talk a little bit about money. You will learn today that while $700,000 is the proposed grant amount cap, it is per application. More than $700,000 may be awarded to one agency or organization. You can submit a separate application for each additional community that you and your partners can serve. For example, let's say you plan to serve 3 rural towns. 3 applications are submitted for the 3 towns at $300,000 per application. If all 3 grants are awarded, that would be a total of $900,000. That may be possible. If one of the 3 grants is awarded, both the state and your organization will be clear on what community will be served through the awarded application. So please keep these points in mind as we go through today. The presenters today will get into more details as we go through the application guide to further explain this exciting new program. I hope you enjoyed today's webinar, and we look forward to your questions. And now I'd like to turn it over to Victor to get us started. Victor?
Great. Thank you very much, Cedric. We're glad you're here with us today. We traditionally do these workshops in person, so we hope the technology works for you as planned. This webinar is being recorded, and we will post a link to the webinars on our program website, which you are seeing at your screen. Sam is showing you where the program website is on your screen, and the key document is the application guide. So if you scroll down a bit, the application guide is there. Now you'll see where it says total amount available. It says 19 million. Well, Cedric did mention 57 million, and that is because the state budget trailer bill, which was recently signed by the governor just a few days ago, is making additional funds available. So by early next week, this program website will be updated with new information about the 57 million being available instead of 19 million, and information about the grant performance period, which we'll cover today. So before we get into the application guide, a few of the webinar features for you to be aware of are the following. One is closed captions. If you go to your toolbar and click on those 3 dots, you'll see a menu that comes up, and look for turn on live captions. Okay, so that's one option for you. Secondly, in a key option is the chat feature. So Sam is showing you where the chat feature is found on your toolbar. It looks like a paragraph symbol. Please click on that, and that is where you will post your questions today. We do look forward to your questions. They do help with our presentation, and I may address some of your questions over the microphone for the whole audience to hear as well. So please feel free to ask your questions. Now, we will go through the entire application guide. We'll give you the program overview, eligible applicants. We'll go through the grant selection criteria to explain how you can score points. We'll go through the cost estimate forms, your eligible cost section. So we'll go through the entire application guide today. So it'd be very helpful if you can hold your questions to the topic on hand as much as possible. As Cedric mentioned, we will go page by page through the entire application guide. Now, when you post your question, you're going to see either a thumbs up or a heart symbol. And that's just a way that we internally communicate with each other to make sure that both we see your question as well as who will answer your question in the chat feature. So Natalie and I will take the lead on monitoring the chat area. And if there's a thumbs up, that means Natalie's working on your question. And if there's a heart symbol, that means I'm working on your question. So it may take a few minutes to get back to your question. Thank you very much for that. So if you run into any technical issues with sound or visual video, please email ogals@parks.ca.gov, spelled OGALS at parks.ca.gov, and include your phone number with a very brief description of what issue you're having, and we'll have a team that's monitoring the emails ready to help you. Okay, so throughout today's webinar, your screen will show you what page we are on in the application guide. So Sam, if you go ahead and pull up the application guide. And as our presenters, as Kyle and Christine go to another page, they'll announce what page in the application guide you're in. Now, when they mention a page number, it is of the actual document. So on the bottom corners of the pages, there's a page number. It's not the PDF page number you'll see at the top of your screen right there. Disregard those numbers. That is because that includes the cover page as well as the inside cover. So if they say page 3, Sam can give them a sample of where page 3 is. So on your screen, it will look like, there you go. So that's the table of contents. And you'll see in the bottom corner, it says page 3. Okay, so that's that's how you can follow along to see where we are with the application guide. Now, if you lose the page, you're not clear where we are, just simply post in the chat feature, what page are you on? And Natalie or I will cite the page for you right away. Okay, so at that, we'll now jump into the table of contents, and team, go ahead, you're up. Thank you very much.
Cool, thank you, Victor. As previously mentioned, we'll be going page by page through the OEP application guide. We will point out key information on each page. Remember, if you have any questions, just please type those into the chat feature. And here we are, we're already on page 3 for the table of contents. So this page is the table of contents page. It lists the 4 color-coded sections of the program overview in orange, application package in blue, eligible costs in red, and the appendices in green. The color-coded sections correlate to the top headers throughout the guide, so applicants can orient themselves when they're looking at the guide to see exactly where they are. I also want to draw your attention to the last sentence on this page. All words and terms in small caps are defined in the back of this guide. You can go ahead and put any questions into the chat feature. And Sam, if you could please turn to page 4 for the program overview. The top of page 4 says that operation and transportation costs for programs are eligible. There's also 3 key terms that are in cap letters. They are community home base, outdoor program, and natural area trips. These are in cap letters because they are defined. Let's go ahead and read these 3 definitions to get a better feel for this program. Sam, if you could turn to page 50 for the definition of community home base. And it's right there at the bottom of page 50. So community home base is a central gathering place for residents of an underserved community where the majority of targeted participants live. For example, a school, recreation center, community meeting space, or local park may serve as a central gathering place in the underserved community. You can see page 5 and 6 and project selection criteria 1. Next, let's turn to page 53 to read the definition of outdoor program. This is a little bigger definition here. Outdoor program is a series of activities, sub-programs proposed through one application that promote education, physical activities, leadership, and career pathways that strengthen participants' connection with the natural world. These include activities in the community and transporting residents to a natural area trips from the community home base. These do not involve actual construction projects of buildings or land infrastructure. And we've got some examples down here. Self-discovery activities that empower participants to develop a sense of connection with nature, which may include unstructured time spent in natural area trip. Activities that contribute to healthy lifestyles, sound nutritional habits, and improved outdoor educational and recreational experiences. Integrating instruction in science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics that connects to the nature experiences stewardship. Activities that foster stewardship of the environment using curriculum pursuant to coordinate instructional resources and strategies providing active pupil participation with on-site conservation efforts. Promote service learning opportunities between schools and local communities. Assess the impact to participating pupils of the Unified Education Strategy on pupil achievement and resource conservation. Also, a curriculum that is aligned to the content standards for California public schools adopted by the State Board of Education, including, but not limited to, the Next Generation Science Standards or the California History Social Science Standards. Also, service learning and community outreach activities related to strengthening the connection to the natural world. And finally, therapeutic recreation using nature to help people heal. Next, we'll turn to page 52 for the definition of natural area trip. Thank you, Sam. So natural area trip is defined as a location at least 5 miles from the community home base that is challenging to access by residents, such as beaches, rivers, lakes, forests, mountains, deserts, tribal land, and state and national parks within the boundary of California. Okay, so that gave you a good basic feel for the spirit of this program. We're going to go ahead and turn back to page 4. Perfect. And here you're going to see there are where we list the eligible applicants, which include public agencies, including cities, counties, local educational agencies, open space authorities, and districts, and also nonprofits with 501c3 status. Also, you'll see that we do have the grant performance period here, which is has been changed. So it currently is going to be from July 1, 2020 through June 30th of 2025. And also the amount available is listed here, but as Victor talked about earlier, it has been increased to 57 million. And there's going to be more information that will follow on our website in the coming weeks. The maximum grant request per application is $700,000. And the minimum is $20,000. And the good news is there's no match requirement. Each application will propose a community home base, which we will go over on the next page. And this will allow for clear reporting. The $700,000 cap is per community home base application. You can submit a separate application for each additional community home base that you or your partners can serve. This means more than $700,000 may be awarded to one agency or organization. If you have any questions, please put those in the chat feature. And before we move on to Christine, Victor, do you have any questions you'd like to bring to the group's attention?
Thank you very much, Kyle. I do. So we have a few questions about basically the intent of this program. And as Kyle just covered and Cedric covered as well, it's really twofold. One is to find a community home base in an underserved community. And we'll get more into that under criteria number 1 in a few minutes. And you'll schedule activities in that community. And activities in the community is a defined term on page 50. Secondly, the program can support transportation of the youth and community members from that area into natural area destinations. So it'll be both. Now, partnerships can come in play here. So if you're focused more on the natural area destination, such as a state park, a national park or a beach or what have you, you can always partner with another organization or agency that can actually conduct the activities in the community on your behalf. So we'll cover partnerships as well. The other really good question from Claire is, if you go back to page 4, Kyle. I'm sorry, Sam. And in the middle of page 4, where you see the title Grant Performance Period, there's a question about July 1st, 2020. And then it says right under it, visit the program website for updates. Under it, you see 19 million. So in last year's budget, the program was authorized at 19 million. And that grant performance period is updated. And I'll post the updates for you now. But the key here is through the original 19 million, if the grant is awarded this upcoming spring, so spring of 2022 is when we plan on making awards. The great news is you will have about 3 years to conduct your program with the grant funding. So the grant performance period for the 19 million is extended all the way through June of 2025 instead of 2023. So you'll have about 3 years to conduct your program. Now, the additional 38 million that was recently made available in this year's state budget has a grant performance period that is a 1-year difference from the original 19 million. And I'll post that. It's also going to be explained on our website. But in short, that grant performance period for the new 38 million will be July 1st of this year, July 1st, 2021 through June 30, 2026. So it's an additional 1 year. Okay. So that means that your program could be proposed for about 4 years from the grant awards that will occur in spring of 2022. So you can plan up to either 3 years or 4 years to use the grant funds. And that's really important for you to be aware of, because that does affect it can affect your grant cost estimate, knowing that the grant can be spent over 3 years or 4 years. We also will work with you during the application process to see if you are envisioning a shorter program, which is up to 3 years, or a bit of a longer program for up to 4 years. And we'll have a very brief question for you once the online application system becomes available. Okay, so I'll post the dates for you right now. That'll give me a few minutes. And Christine, you're up. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Vic. Okay, so if we can turn to page 5. Perfect. This is the program overview of the community home base and grant selection criteria. So this page explains to the applicant that each application will first choose a community home base, which will be a central gathering place in an underserved community that needs access to outdoor programs. For example, a community center or a school. The second step is to plan activities and trips from the community home base to natural areas outside the community. The activities in the community can be urban or rural. For example, activities in the community could include preparing students for a school trip to a state park or educational walks within the community, etc. And natural area trips could include transporting participants from the community home base to natural areas that are challenging to access, such as regional, state, national parks, beaches, rivers or lakes, forests, mountains, or deserts statewide. The second half of the page summarizes the above steps and notes that the grant priorities begin on page 14. So if we can now turn to the next page, which is page 6. Perfect. And so this page provides a visual of the basic approach for this program, which includes the information that I discussed on the previous page. So here you can see within the circle is number 1, and that's to identify that community home base. Again, it will have to be in an underserved community, and it will you will use that community fact finder that will report the data within that community home base half-mile radius. By establishing the community home base, the grant applicant will be able to purpose how the underserved community will receive access to that outdoor program. And so then moving down to number 2 is to conduct activities at or near that community home base. Again, activities could include preparing for natural area destinations or learning about the community's environment and strengthening those ties between the community and the natural world. And finally, number 3 is to organize trips from that community home base to natural area destinations. So that's a great visual of the program and what we talk about identifying that community home base. So if we can turn to the next page, page 7. Perfect. So at the top there, you'll see the application deadline that is on our webpage, and we have announced that date, and it is October 8th. And so again, the application deadline is October 8th of this year. Going further down the page there is the application process. The application process section identifies important steps to follow as you submit your application. I would like to call your attention to items 3 through 5 on this page. We are asking applicants to, number 3, participate in the extensive technical assistance methods such as application workshops, which you are doing right now, and contacting OGALS's OEP experts. Also, you can see page 42 for a complete list of technical assistance services available for applicants. Number 4 is to review the grant administrative guide, including contract provisions, to understand the requirements if the competitive application is selected for funding. And then number 5 is to submit the online application by the application deadline, which again is that October 8th, 2021 date. Application submittal instructions will be found on page 9 of this guide. So if we can now turn to the next page, which is page 8. Perfect. And so this is the grant administration process and performance period page. Applicants who receive a grant must attend a mandatory grant administration workshop before receiving their contracts. These workshops will be offered in accessible areas throughout the state. We will also be offering successful applicants the outdoor recreation leadership training from the department's Office of Community Involvement. This training is voluntary, but again, it is available to successful applicants. We will also be discussing this program in more detail towards the end of this webinar. As a reminder, grantees will need to send in their final payment request at least 3 months before the end of the grant performance period. This will accommodate for any changes or needs we will need to work out before the final liquidation date. If you have any questions about these pages, please put them in the chat feature. Victor, do we have any questions that you want to go over?
Thank you, Christine. Yes,
Sure.
we have a good question from Lourdes, and there's more about basically getting reimbursed for community input meetings that have occurred in the past to inform your proposed program. And the question is, how far back in time may we go? And may we include community meetings in 2020? Okay, so that's a good question. The first thing is we'll get to talk about community planning in a few minutes, which is criteria number 2 on page 16. And the answer is you can definitely describe community planning you've had at any time before the application is submitted. So criteria number 2, community planning, is about what you're talking about, Lourdes, and that is planning your program with the community before the application is submitted. And yes, you can go back to 2020. Now, the second part of the question is a little more detailed, and that is, can you get reimbursed for it? And for that, the answer is there's a term we're going to talk about today. Christine will cover it later today when we get to the eligible cost section and your cost estimate for your grant proposal. But there's a term on page 54 called pre-award planning costs. And those are costs during the grant's performance period only. So I posted the current grants performance period for the entire $57 million. And the original 19 million grant performance period started July 1st, 2020. The new additional 38 million has a grant performance period that started July 1st, 2021. We're going to have to work out the details more later. We're going to have an update for you in the application system online in a few weeks. But the answer is basically up to 5% of your grant amount can be proposed for reimbursement for pre-award planning costs that go back to the start of the grant's performance period. Okay, so again, that is defined on page 54. Please see the definition of pre-award planning costs on page 54. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Victor and Christine. If you could, Sam, please turn to page 9 for the application package. So pages 9 to 36 contain information and guidance on completing the application. Each community home base will need a separate application. However, applicants can submit as many applications for separate community home bases as desired. Applicants should use the checklist on the following page to organize the application. This page provides additional information, including checklist items 1 through 9, which are required for all applicants, and checklist item 10, which is required for nonprofits only. We do ask that you send only the items requested in the checklist. Do not send supplementary materials such as PowerPoint presentations or letters of support. And also, applications will be submitted online. Sam, please turn to page 10 for the checklist. This page is home to the application checklist that includes items needed to complete the application and lists which items require the authorized representative's signature. We will be going over each checklist item during the webinar today, so we ask that you please save questions for a specific item until we reach that section during our presentation. Sam, if you could please turn to page 11. This page provides instructions on filling out the application form. Sam, if you turn to page 12. On this page is the application form, which provides the name and location of the community home base and must be signed by the authorized representative. I'll give you a moment to review the form. You can put any questions in the chat feature. Victor, do you have any questions you'd like to bring to the group's attention?
No, we can keep going, Kyle. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So Sam, if you could please turn to page 13. This page includes an overview of the grant selection criteria, checklist item 2. This criteria will be used to rank all statewide applications. There are 6 criteria for the Outdoor Equity Program that add up to a max of 100 points. Notice the bullets. To all applicants start with 0 points. No one loses points, points are gained. To guide the applicants, each criterion has a scoring chart. Technical assistance is also available for each criterion in the back of the guide. Sam, if you could please turn to page 14 for criterion 1. Criterion number 1 focuses on the community home base. This page is broken into 2 parts. Part A's scoring points will be based off numbers provided by the community fact finder in the categories of income, poverty, free and reduced priced meals, and English learner levels around the community home base. Part B asks applicants to describe challenges affecting the residents. It asks specifically why the community home base was selected and what is the need for its residents to have access to an outdoor program. Here is a chance to include information that data from the rest of the criteria does not provide. These rubrics are based on a statewide scale, which compares all applications to determine point rankings. So we can look at the rubrics here, the first rubric. And this first rubric is points for A, it's per capita income. And you can see the lowest 10% on the statewide ranked list would get 6 points. From 11 to 20% of the ranked list, 5 points. From 21 to 50% on the ranked list, 4 points. From 51 to 80% on the ranked list, 3 points. From 81 to 100% on the rank list, 1 point, and if no information is provided, you would receive 0 points. For the next rubric below, it's points for A, it's people in poverty. You can see if you're the highest 10% on the rank list, you would receive 5 points. 11% to 20% on the ranked list, 4 points. 21% to 50% on the rank list, 3 points. And from 51% to 80% on the rank list, 2 points. And from 81% to 100% on the ranked list, 1 point. If no information was provided, you would receive 0 points. Now I'd like to draw your attention to the Community Fact Finder version created for this program. The Community Fact Finder is a tool that we use to find specific information for the community's home base. Sam, can you go to the Community Fact Finder screen? So to go to this, you can click on that link that was in the guide, or you can go to parks4california.org/outdoor equity. So once you're on the screen here, you'll see on the lower side there is an address bar where you can enter in an address, a city, the latitude or longitude. And so we can enter in an address here. And once you get it all entered, you can hit the Go button. It's blue on the right side. And so now you'll see a map. You can move the pen around on this map by either clicking on that and moving it, or if you move the cursor around, you'll see there's an X. It has an X, so you can just click around if you wanted it to as well. and the pen would move to where you click. You'll also see some different overlays. You can turn them on or off. So there's 3 overlays. There is the parks and open space, which is the one that's on right now, and that shows the green overlays for where there are parks within the community. You can also see below that there's a disadvantaged community. You can click on that. It'll show you disadvantaged community. We don't use this disadvantaged community for this program, but if you wanted to use it, you could. The next layer is schools. So you click on schools. It'll show all the schools in the area, which are orange blocks. And that might help you if you're unfamiliar with an area to know where the schools are, what the name of the school is. And what it's showing you is public elementary through high schools. So soon I'll show you how to create a final report, and that final report is what is used for criteria number 1. So if you look at right now on the map, the mouse is a cursor. So Sam, if you put that mouse, see it's a cross on there. So if you wanted to change it, you could click on this orange button up here on the upper left. It'll turn from orange to blue. Now you put the cursor back over the map, and you're able to drag the map around, and you're also able to click on the parks. You can click on a park or a school, and you can get that school's information or park's information. So let's say the school is the community home base. You can move the pen anywhere within that school to find the best numbers for you. And you're looking for the lowest per capita income, the highest number of people below poverty, for example. And just to kind of show you those things that we're looking for, to the left of the map, we're looking for the per capita income, which is page 14 of the application guide. We're also looking at people in poverty, which is also on page 14 of the application guide. We have the free or reduced price meals, which is on page 15 of the application guide. And we're also looking at English learners, which is page 15 of the application guide. So let's just say this is the final pinpoint of the community home base you want to use. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to get a report. So there's a button up here on the kind of the middle of the page that says get report. So you click on that button. And it'll create a report, which you'll download. And you click on the report. Now you get the PDF report. And this is what's going to be included in our application. And these numbers that are highlighted are going to be the numbers that you'll be including in criteria 1. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn to technical assistance, which is found on page 43 for criterion 1. So the goal of OEP is to provide access to residents who otherwise would be financially, imaginatively, or physically unable to benefit from the outdoor programming. The community home base should be strategically located within walking distance of most residents. If you have any questions about criteria 1, go ahead and put those in the chat feature. And Sam, if you could turn to page 16 for criterion 2. Thank you, Sam. Criterion number 2 focuses on community planning. Here, applicants describe how the community's feedback was obtained through outreach and to provide the ideas that the community had for outdoor programs, including activities at or near the home base and at or near the natural area trips that will be implemented. This planning must occur between AB 209 appropriation, which is July 1, 2020, to the application deadline. Answer A, B, and C in this criterion to demonstrate community engagement in the outdoor program's design. Part A, applicants will discuss the methods of outreach, such as in-person meetings, online platform, teleconferences, etc. The location, addresses, and the start and end times of the applicant's community engagements. Also, discuss why this was an effective location for community engagement, as well as the number of residents and the general description. Part B, applicants will discuss the activities near the community home base and the ideas that will be implemented from the residents. Do not include ideas that will not be implemented. Part C, this is the same as Part B, except this focuses on natural area trips instead of at the community home base. Sam, if you could go to the next page for the scoring rubric. Perfect. So in order to score 5 points in the top rubric, an applicant includes at least 20 multi-generational residents, including parents, guardians, older adults, and at least 10 youth that were engaged through a combination of 2 or more meetings to give feedback about planning the outdoor program. In order to score 10 points in the bottom rubric, 5 points would be gained by listing accepted residents' ideas for the community home base, and 5 points for natural area trips. Technical assistance can be found on page 44. This page includes ideas for outreach and how to structure meetings to capture residents' ideas. Cedric, did you want to speak more about the community-based planning and following CDC guidelines at the time when engagement occurs?
Certainly. Thanks, Kyle. So with all of our programs, we have an interest in wanting to make certain that the community that's going to be served has input into the activities that are going to take place there. So it's vitally important for you not to just develop a program and then go to introduce it to a community or simply set up in a community and then try to bring people in. It's important that you are engaging them in a process that whatever programming you're going to provide is going to be relevant for them. I think you're picking up by now that this program is more than just taking people on trips. It really is about community empowerment and connecting people to nature in a way that it becomes relevant for them daily in their lives. So the idea here is that when we ultimately have the program or the money is over and programming is no longer offered, that the community will have within it the ability to continue on engaging nature and understanding nature as it's surrounding them, as well as the ability to partner and go on those outings that might be away from their particular community. So community empowerment is critically important. It is about developing a nature-based ethos, a recreation-based ethos that allows people to have something that that is within their community for the long term. Equally, what we'll need to do once the programs come to an end is we need to do an evaluation of the program. It's important that you understand that the evaluation is not going to necessarily be on just how many people you brought from one location to the other. What we are looking for is the quality of the experience that people are having. We want to know, as an example, what happens once you left that area, or if once the dollars are gone. What we're trying to establish is how this investment transforms the community and gives people opportunities that don't currently exist. So what we're doing here by introducing things like the community home base and by requiring the community engaged process is we're taking it a step further. That may or may not be something that you're comfortable or have been involved with. So for example, if you're not a community, a organization that's familiar with taking organizations to natural areas and you're wanting it to become a part of your menu of options, then this program and taking these steps will give you the opportunity to do that. So just want to make sure that people understand that we are looking for these community meetings to take place. Recognizing that there may be COVID restrictions that are in place, what we are suggesting is that you abide by the COVID restrictions. Those meetings can be both virtual or in person. We certainly hope that we'll be able to have in-person meetings. And what we found with our previous program, and in fact, the statewide park program, which we're currently evaluating, that during the peak of the COVID pandemic, people were able to have creative, innovative meetings that adhered to the requirements of their particular area, and they were able to come up with ways in which they gathered a great deal of public interest and public input during that time. We're going to be here to bounce things off of. We have tools available to you to give you ideas, as the one that is in this document, as well as we have, I think, the community-based park design through community-based document that's on our website is also one that you can look at, that give you great ideas from the experiences that people have had and how to gain valuable input. So, not trying to overemphasize it, but at the core of all of this money belongs to the people of the state, so they should be a part of the program design. I'll turn it over to Christine at this point. Christine?
Perfect. Thanks so much, Cedric. Before I move on to criteria 3, Vic, were there any questions you wanted to bring up from criteria 1 or 2?
You read my mind, Christine. Thank you so much for
Sure.
the question about questions. Yes. So we're getting a bit into what type of programming is eligible. And one example was, can programming at a community garden be eligible? And the answer is absolutely yes. But if you go back to criteria number 2 on page 16, you'll see that several places we say topics can include goals and logistics for criteria 3 through 6. So what Christine is about to cover, which is criteria number 3, is what I would call basically like the main focal point of your proposed program. It has the most detail in terms of how many people will be served, what age groups are they, how many activities will take place in the community, what's the scope of those activities, and cost estimate for those activities. And then also, where are you planning to take the community members to natural areas? And so what I would recommend is, if you haven't yet done this, you can include questions when you have your planning meetings with the community members to talk about the goals and logistics for criteria 3 through 6. So keep that in mind. So absolutely, yes, a community garden programming could take place, but you also, to score points, there's also going to be a factor of what are you proposing to take community members to from the community home base to more remote areas outside their community. So that's also part of this program. So, keep that in mind as we go through criteria 3 through 6. And also, if it's going to be, if you're realizing criteria 3 through 6 includes things that are beyond what you were currently thinking, the best advice I can give you is that we see 2 types of applicants. Some that allow the criteria to lead them to new direction, to new ideas, and they adapt, and they actually either form partnerships or they form solutions to score those points. So you may find that you may have to evolve a bit with the program that you're thinking about doing into either forming some partnerships or looking at other ideas to really meet the intent of this program as much as possible. So keep that in mind when we go through criteria 3 through 6. So Christine, you're up. Thank you. Also, I'm sorry. One more question I had, which was interesting, is can this program also support activities for veterans or families, for example? And absolutely, as you get to criteria number 3, you'll see that that's actually a good way to score additional points. You do want to include at least one activity for other age groups, like older adults or families or veterans, and at least one activity in the community and one natural area trip for other age groups. However, the main emphasis will be serving youth, and that's based on that's based on the way the program was written in legislation. Okay, so Christine, go ahead and take them to criteria number 3. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Vic. So yes, we will be moving on to criteria 3, and that is on page 18. So here you'll see the next 2 pages, you will have to discuss activities in the community and natural area trips. So before we get into discussing the charts though, if we can go to the definition section, I would like to go over what we mean by activities in the community. And so this is found on page 50. Perfect. So if you see there at the top of the page is activities in the community. These are outdoor or indoor education components designed to teach participants about the community's environment and the community's link to clean air, water, and land that achieves one or more of the following goals. Those goals are environmental justice analysis and reporting that may involve youth leadership development in the community, solution-based learning about the community's connection to climate change and other environmental issues, such as stormwater runoff, air quality, groundwater supply, energy and water efficiency, etc. Number 3, discovering nature in action in the community through educational walks or visits to local resources such as community parks, zoos, nature centers, etc. Number 4, curriculum-based activities at the community home base. And again, you can see in this section, we have a definition of what we mean by education. And then number 5 is preparing participants for natural area trips. So that is the definition of activity in the community. So now that we have that definition, if we can turn back to that page 18, which is again criteria number 3. Perfect. So this page asks about the activities in the community. So again, let's go through that A through L that we have there. So A through E actually is in that chart. A asks for the activity goal title. B asks the location of where the activity is going to take place and addresses if available. C is the number of intended participants per each day. Again, an average day is acceptable. D is for number of planned activity days. And then E is when you're going to total the number of intended participants, where you multiply that C times D in that chart. So moving down the page, we also have questions, and that's that F through L. We want you to provide a general description of intended participants. We want to know who's going to be there, youth, older adults, multi-generational, etc. Of those total listed in E, we want to know how many will be youth participants. And again, youth participants is defined in the back of the guide. For G, we want you to cite which educational goal will be met per the definition of education, which again is found on page 51. Briefly just summarize the qualifications of the group or individual who will provide the experience and what teaching methods will be used. H, how will the activity increase community capacity to foster a long-term environmental justice legacy, such as engaging in planning and improving the community's environment? I is to list supplies, equipment, and activity fees and their associated cost estimates, Again, we will go over what are eligible and ineligible costs later in this webinar. J, briefly describe the estimated transportation costs if applicable. These may include transporting participants to and from the community home base. K, briefly describe estimated costs for labor, including job titles, hourly rates, times, and hours. And then finally, L is to get that total estimated cost, that I plus J plus K, to achieve the activity goal. Again, this will help you when you need to fill out your grant scope cost estimate form. Again, we will go over that later in the webinar. So if we can turn, so this page here again goes over what we want you to fill out for activities in the community. So again, that second part of this program is to take applicants, to take participants to those natural areas. So if we can turn to the next page, which is page 19. Perfect. And so you will see here, this is where we ask about the natural area trips. The chart and questions are similar. So again, in that chart, we want to know the trip title, including the name of the destination. We want to know for B, the destination location name and address if available. For C, we want to know the number intended participants for the trip. Again, an average estimate per trip is acceptable. For D, we want the reoccurring natural area trips to the same location, and please list the number of the repeat trips. Otherwise, list one. And then E, total number of intended participants. Again, we want you to multiply that C times D for that chart. So following again down for F, we want you to provide that general description of intended participants, same as the last chart. And then G is, will it be an one-day trip or an overnight or multiple days? If it will be multiple days, we want to know how many days are there involved in the trip. Again, for H, we want you to cite which educational goal will be met per the definition of education. And then I is also, how will participants have time for self-discovery to explore or play and form a personal connection with nature? J through L are similar to the previous chart. Again, we want you to list supplies and equipment and activity fees, transportation costs, and then labor costs as well. And then for M, we want you to add that J through L to achieve the total estimated cost. So with that, if we can turn to the next page, and that's page 20. Perfect. So here is the scoring rubric for criteria number 3. We will focus on that top box there. In the scoring rubric, applications will be compared on that statewide scale. You can see there on the top right corner that 20 points are the maximum for this criteria. To get that maximum number, you will see you need to have activities both in the community and natural area trips. You will need to have the activities have education and self-discovery, nature exploration components to them. The primary intended participants of the overall outdoor program are youth. However, at a minimum, at least one activity in the community and at least one natural area trip will involve other age groups, such as families, older adults, or other residents. This means your program will emphasize serving youth, but again, at least one activity in the community and one trip should include other age groups, again, like families, older adults, etc. If you are needing to expand on the age groups that you normally serve, you may want to consider partnering with another organization. Not only will this help you achieve that 20-point maximum for this criteria, but the partnership may also count towards points for criteria number 5, which focuses on partnerships and capacity building, which we will be going over later in this webinar. You'll notice, there's a sliding scale there for the different boxes. And at the very bottom, you will see that applications that do not include any outdoor program activities designed to create connection to the natural world will be ineligible. So if we can now turn to page 47. There is technical assistance for this criterion. Here you will find tips for this criterion, as well as examples of types of activities for both activities in the community, as well as nature area trips. So here, if we move down the chart, you'll see there are examples of meaningful opportunities. Again, youth leadership and community organizing and outreach to residents during community-based planning. You can have internships, reporting on or interviewing participants, including technical skills such as videography. Leadership can be developed by participants sharing their skills, insight, and experiences with other residents, etc. If we can turn to the next page. Perfect, which is that for, oops, sorry. Is it back on the other? Or is it scrolling down? Okay, well, that's it then. All right, so if you have any questions, please put them in the chat feature. Victor, before I move on to criteria number 4, are there any questions that came up that you want to discuss?
Thanks, Christine. There's a good question from Donna, and I'll read the question. Many organizations are still planning around COVID safety issues, given that many children are still not vaccinated. Should we plan for post-COVID participation and be able to adjust if things change? So obviously I'm not Dr. Fauci. I don't know when post-COVID will occur. This is all a new territory for all of us. But I can tell you that as administrators, we know what the grant performance period is. And the great news, again, is that the grants performance period has been extended. So you can plan your program based on knowing that grant awards should occur around spring of 2022. And you will have approximately 3 years to complete your program. So that's the great news. It's not a 1-year grant anymore. It's a 3-year grant performance period at a minimum. And again, as we mentioned, we're going to provide some more information about how to navigate between the original 19 million performance period and the additional 38 million that all will be available this upcoming application cycle. So in summary, Donna, we don't know what post-COVID looks like. We are definitely glad that the rates are lower right now in California, and the governor has currently pretty much opened things up, but you'll have to monitor, as all of us will, the evolving COVID situations throughout the course of the grant and adjust accordingly. But the good news is it's a longer performance period. So I would start with that premise that you can plan for approximately a 3-year program. Okay, thank you.
Victor, I want to just add to that. This is Cedric. So one of the things to think about is this program is about getting people in nature, and it is going to require that you have proximity to folks. So we're all going to be standing by as we move through this COVID to a post-COVID world where we don't have to worry about it at all. But in the meantime, whatever standards are going to be set by our regulators, we're going to need to follow. But this is not a virtual program, so the option of doing a virtual program for participants would not be appropriate for the long-term interest of the program. So we're here beside you when you receive a grant award from us. We're in partnership, so we'll be monitoring along with you. So as you're planning, plan on activities that you are actually getting people out and getting them engaged in nature, and then we will see where we go as we move into the post-COVID world.
Excellent. Thank you, Cedric. And I just saw a good comment from Fatima that said the great thing about being outdoors is that you can socially distance. So that could be, one idea is if the grant's awarded in spring of 2022, you may be able to plan launching your activities in the community from a community home base to learn about the community's environment as defined on page 50. Starting in late spring, summer of 2022, and part of that can also involve getting prepared for the trips to natural areas. So thank you, Fatima, for that comment as well. We'll take a 5-minute break now, and it's a good time for you to grab some coffee, stretch out, and we'll be back at 10:55. Okay, thanks everyone.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. We will continue with the workshop now. I do apologize. So I got ahead of myself a little bit when I was describing the technical assistance from criteria 3. I actually would like to draw your attention back to the technical assistance for that criteria 3, which is actually on page 45. So if we can turn to page 45. Perfect. So with that, activities in the community, we really want to strengthen the connection to the natural world. And so again, we list a few examples there, that 1 through 6. A couple of them may be for partnerships to help provide additional experience or serve other age groups or abilities. The majority of the activities should take place outdoors. However, indoor education classes or some indoor activities due to weather constraints are acceptable. Transportation is eligible cost if it meets the following purposes of taking participants to and from the community home base and natural area trips, and taking participants to and from community home base, their schools, and neighborhoods. So you can read that 1 through 6. And then scrolling down the page, we have a few examples. These education topics may include, but are not limited to, these examples. And these are natural resources and interpretation, guided nature walks, cultural heritage and historic exploration, coastal protection, camping skills, wilderness survival skill building, etc. So again, these are just some examples that we came up with for activities in the community or during natural area trips. If we go to the next page, page 46, perfect. You'll see there at the top that we also list a few recreation activities that may be included, including hiking, horseback riding, swimming, sledding, etc. Teamwork and leadership building activities in nature, cooking and learning, sound nutritional habits, and other recreation-based multi-generational activities, etc. So again, these few pages here really help with that technical assistance for criteria 3. Okay, so now we will move on to grant selection criteria 4, and that is on page 21. Perfect. Here we ask applicants to describe how residents, including youth, will participate in meaningful service learning, career pathway, and leadership opportunities during the grant performance period by answering those questions in that chart, that A through C. So we ask an A for applicants to describe the opportunities for residents that can be used for future employment resumes or college admissions. B, the number of residents. C, cost for internships if applicable. Again, the opportunities may be paid or unpaid volunteers. Notice again in the description that it focuses on those opportunities that can be used for job resumes and college admissions. The scoring rubric at the bottom gives the maximum of 15 points for an outdoor program that will involve at least 15 residents who will receive service learning, career pathway education, and leadership opportunities. If you notice at the bottom of the rubric that 0 points will be gained if the outdoor program does not involve any of these activities. or opportunities, I should say. So technical assistance is available on this criteria on page 47. Perfect. And so here we include examples of meaningful opportunities for residents. So you can see there towards the middle of the page, we have a few of those examples. This is where I got ahead of myself, the last criteria, but you could read those 1 through 6. Again, youth leadership and community organizing and outreach to residents during community-based planning, developing communication related to water, parks, climate, etc., and reporting on or interviewing participants, including using technical skills such as videography. So again, these are just some examples that we put on there that you can use for this criteria. So again, if you have any questions about this criteria, please put it in the chat feature. So now I will pass it along to Kyle, unless Victor, do you have any questions that came up that you want to go over?
No questions, Christine, but I just want to emphasize the spirit behind this. It is about giving youth or underemployed adults a something transferable that they can use for either college admissions or for a job resume when they are trying to get employed. So whether it's a stipend, paid internship, or volunteers, think along those lines that there should be a certificate or something else that they can then use for future employment references or college admissions. So one question we received in a prior workshop is from a potential applicant that's focusing on younger children. And the question was, how can we give, like, let's say K through 5 a stipend or internship or a certificate since college is so far away or they won't be employed for so many years. And I think there's two parts to the answer. One is that you can definitely at least expose youth, like children, to dream about what types of careers they could have in the outdoors, in nature, in the environmental sector. And I remember, you've all probably remembered having firefighters come to your school and talk about being a firefighter or a police officer, for example. Well, the same could be true for rangers or other environmental stewards, to talk to youth about what it's like to have that type of job and get them thinking about that at an early age. But secondly, you may want to branch out and extend your program to score more points, to also involve teenagers that are in high school preparing for college, or even college students, to also be part of this program. And that could be done through a partnership, which is something that we will cover in a few minutes under criteria number 5. Okay, thanks, Christine.
Cool, thanks, Victor. Thanks, Rich. Sam, if I get you to turn to page 22 so we can go on over criterion 5 for partnerships and capacity building. Perfect follow-up for Victor. This criterion asks applicants to describe partnership assistance that will be provided starting with the appropriation date of AB 209, which is July 1st, 2020, through the grant performance period. Examples of partners include, but are not limited to, health organizations, schools, nonprofits, and community clubs. Partners can assist in many ways, including providing transportation services, donating food and supplies, or committing funds. This criterion has 2 parts, A and B, as shown in the 2-column chart above the scoring rubric. Part A requests the name and general purpose of the partner, and Part B requests information about the partner's role in the project. The scoring rubric at the bottom of the page shows that a maximum of 10 points will be given to applicants with 2 or more partnerships. Sam, if you could please turn to page 48 so we can review the technical assistance for this criterion. A few things I'd like to highlight are we recognize some community groups do not have a formal 501c3 status. We added example number 3, the community groups can partner with an eligible applicant. The eligible applicant will be the fiscal sponsor, administer the grant if awarded, while the community groups can perform services on behalf of the fiscal sponsor. This is an example of a partnership that can earn a point. There's no point advantage for greater amounts of committed funds. Cash contributions are not required. We encourage forming a health organization partnership, but it is not required to obtain maximum points for this criterion. We do suggest including a health organization as a project partner because AB 209 includes the following priority: contribute to healthy lifestyles, sound nutritional habits, and improved outdoor educational and recreational experiences. The definition of health organization can be found on this page as well as on page 51 of the guide. Please put any questions you might have into the chat feature. And Sam, if you could please turn to page 23 for criterion 6, mentoring youth after the grant performance period. Thank you. So sustaining the outdoor program beyond the grant performance period is not required. This is about engaging youth after the outdoor program grant has ended. Applicants can describe a plan to recruit and empower youth identified through the outdoor program who have the potential to become future environmental leaders in California by responding to Part A. To describe their plan, applicants will be asked the following questions. How many youths will be selected by the applicant recruited through the outdoor program? And how will they identify those who have potential to become future environmental leaders in California? And what types of activities will the mentoring involve? Examples could include capacity building or educational mentoring towards careers in natural resource professions, or civic engagement, including cultivating active involvement in the decision-making process to have a healthy environment. Or applicants can describe why it is not possible to mentor youth leaders after the grant performance period by responding to Part B. The scoring rubric as shown on the bottom of this page will give a maximum of 10 points for a plan to mentor youth after the grant performance period or for an explanation why this concept cannot be achieved. Technical assistance is available on page 49. And Sam, if you could go to that page for us. Thank you. Another example of continued youth engagement and empowerment shown here is an annual community needs assessment about environmental justice that could be conducted and reported by youth. It should be noted that grant-funded equipment and supplies may continue to be used after the grant performance period. I would like to point out the box on this page regarding the grant selection criteria requirements. We are currently looking at a user-friendly technical assistance tool that will assist grantees with their status report, which will be sent to grantees every 6 months until the final grant payment. The status report will serve as a reminder of what the applicant committed to during the competitive process. This concludes the grant selection portion of the Outdoor Equity Program application guide. Please put any questions into the chat feature. And before we turn it over to Christine, Victor, are there any questions that you'd like to bring to the group's attention?
No questions. So we've covered criteria 1 through 6 now. Again, the key to this program is to allow yourself to a plan based on criteria 1 through 6. So you'll want to find an underserved community that does have a higher rate of poverty to get you off to a good start in criteria number 1. But also remember criteria number 1B is a chance for you to tell a story about the community's challenges not covered by the community fact finder data. So you have some flexibility there to tell a story in your own words as well. So use criteria 1 through 6 to your for your planning purpose over the next few months, and that's the key to really get you off to a good start. And now we're going to talk about the rest of the application requirements. Okay, thanks, Kyle, Christine.
Perfect. Thanks, Vic and Kyle. So if we can turn to page 24. Perfect. And so this is checklist item number 3, which is the Community Fact Finder report and certification. So this page summarizes the steps that Kyle discussed a little earlier in the workshop regarding the Community Fact Finder. So again, you need to create that Community Fact Finder report and include it with the application for your community home base. If we turn to the next page, page 25, this is the Community Fact Finder certification form. This will be signed by your authorized representative, and it certifies that you placed your PIN on or inside the boundary of your community home base for your report. So moving on to the next page is page 26. Perfect. And so this is checklist item number 4. This is the authorizing resolution. The authorizing resolution serves those 2 purposes. It is the means by which the applicant's governing body shows it is aware of all the terms of the contract. It provides confirmation that the applicant has the funding to complete the proposed outdoor program if the grant is awarding. Also, it designates a position title to represent the governing body on all matters regarding the application and the outdoor program. The incumbent in this position is referred to as the authorized representative. So the format, the authorizing resolution, which is on the following page, may be reformatted. However, please do not change the language provided in the resolution. That must remain unchanged. Any changes to the language may require OGALS's legal office review. So again, please do not change any of the language, but it can be reformatted. If the resolution is not ready by that October 8th application due date, please provide a placeholder saying when you expect to have it approved by your governing body. Please put any questions in the chat feature about the Community Finder report or the authorizing resolution. All right, so now we will move on to the how to fill out the grant scope and cost estimate form. Before we go there though, I would like to draw your attention to the program's list of eligible and ineligible costs. So this begins on page 37. Perfect. So here you will see that the page is broken into 2 separate parts. The first part is the pre-award planning costs, and the second is the post-award activity costs. The pre-award planning costs associated with planning the outdoor program during the grant performance period. This includes costs of up to 5% of the grant amount dating back to the date of appropriation. This may include note takers, facilitators, multilingual translation, transportation, equipment, supplies, etc., for meetings and other outdoor program planning purposes. Please also see the definition of pre-award planning costs at the back of the guide. In addition, you can look back to Criteria 2 and the Criteria 2's technical assistance page for more information about planning the proposed outdoor program. So the continuing on down the page there, the second category covers all of the post-award activity costs. And so we will go through those categories A through D, which are the supplies and equipment and activity fees, travel costs, labor costs, and insurance for all activities necessary for the program. So to reiterate, these are not planning costs. Post-award activity costs are direct costs to conduct the activities in the community and natural area trips. These post-award activity costs become eligible on the start date provided by OGALS. You can also turn to the back of the guide to see the definition of post-award activity costs. We will now go into detail about a few of the post-award activity costs. So these are started on the next page, which is page 38. All right, so you can see there at the top is information about the supplies, equipment, and activity fees and admissions. I want to specifically draw your attention to the first bullet point down, and that's for activity fees. And these are location entrance fees for places such as museums, parks, campgrounds, zoos, parking, etc. Specific experiences such as horseback riding, paddling, rafting, rock climbing, renting or leasing vehicles or equipment for the actual activity fits in this category, such as whale watching and safety equipment, etc. So moving down to the third bullet point is the most economical use of state funds. For supplies and equipment that will cost over $500 per single unit item, and which can be purchased, leased, or rented, the most economical use of state funds must be applied. This means that the grantee will use the most affordable option to complete the outdoor program during the grant performance period by either renting, leasing, or purchasing the supplies and equipment. So, for example, we want applicants to think, would it be most cost-effective to rent tents for a weekly camping trip, or would the most cost-effective be to if the tents were purchased and used for the length of the program? So those are kind of questions we want applicants to ask themselves regarding those costs. So moving down to the travel costs there for B, the next item I want to draw your attention to is, well, first, that travel must be within California only. The next bullet point down there for overnight accommodations. So campsite rentals, yurts, and hotels, following the most economical use of state funds, including travel to and from the natural area trips. The cost cannot exceed the state per diem set in each county where the overnight accommodation will take place. So you'll notice there that we have a link to the CalHR website, and they have a chart on that website that lists all of the counties and the overnight maximums in those charts. So that's something we would like you to use for overnight accommodation costs. So moving down a couple more bullet points, it's for the meal per diem for natural area trips only. So for breakfast, lunch, and dinner meals during the path of travel and for overnight stays are eligible up to, again, that state's per diem rates or actual cost, whichever is less. Please keep receipts for audit purposes. All right, so if we can turn to the next page, which is page 39. And at the top there of the page are vehicles. So I will go over all of the bullet points regarding vehicle usage. So vehicle use for transportation of participants may involve taking participants to and from the community home base to natural area trips, or taking participants to and from the community home base and their schools and neighborhoods for activities in the community related to the grant selection criteria. Vehicles chartered or rented by the grantee. So chartered transportation paying for a charter company's standard rate is an eligible cost. Rental of vehicles at market value, including low greenhouse gas emission vehicles, are an eligible cost. The third bullet point there, vehicles owned and leased by grantees. So mileage incurred on a grantee's owned vehicles can be charged at the state's rate that is in effect at the time of the trip. So maintenance and repair costs necessary to safely operate vehicles are built into the state's rate of the allowable charge per mile. A mileage log must record the trips charged to the grant. For audit purposes, the mileage log must describe the miles driven, the outdoor program purpose related to the grant scope, and must be signed by the operator and supervisor. So something I want to draw your attention to is that it is important to note that vehicles cannot be purchased because that would be considered capital outlay, and capital outlay costs are ineligible for this program. So moving on to labor costs. You'll see a list of those labor costs. Again, for employee services, see accounting rules for employee services, which will be explained in the grant administrative guide. Other program management, including site inspections, coordinating partners, materials, and transportation personnel. Communication and training, including outreach to residents. Training of program activity providers for cultural awareness and risk management, reporting, which includes data collection, photography, which can include interviews with participants, grant administration and accounting, and then those miscellaneous costs, again, which includes economical use of state funds, cost comparison for equipment, supplies, transporting materials, and communications and video documentation, etc. So you can see the list of those labor eligible costs. It is also important to mention that background checks on employees, volunteers, chaperones, and other participating adults are also eligible costs. And last but not least is insurance premiums on hazard and liability insurance, including aggregate coverage for all activities necessary for the outdoor program. There will be available soon within the grant administrative guide an insurance policy checklist that lists the insurance policy requirements for grantees. Okay, so if we can move on to the next page, page 40. Perfect. So this is very important. Please keep all records of all costs for audit purposes. For labor charged to the grant, maintain timesheets recording specific time spent on the outdoor program. Keep all invoices, receipts, and payment records for all purchases, leases, and rentals. We can turn to the next page, page 41. Perfect. So now that we've talked about our eligible costs, we will start to talk about the ineligible costs. So there at the top of the page are the start of the ineligible costs. So anything outside of the grant performance period, so costs that incurred before or after the grant performance period are ineligible. Any capital projects such as construction, development of land, again, vehicle acquisition are ineligible. Any indirect costs, overhead business expenses, such as rent, mortgage payments, utilities, etc., are ineligible. Any routine park maintenance by the grantee's existing staff is an ineligible activity. Fundraising is ineligible. And food is ineligible if it is not related to that natural area trip. Grant writing is ineligible, and also programs imposed on an applicant through legal mitigation. So again, continuing down the page here, you look at the lack of record keeping. this is very important. During an audit, lack of record keeping can make claimed costs ineligible. So some examples there are charging employee services without documentation of actual time spent on the outdoor program. Any lack of source documents, again, no evidence of invoices, etc., can make those costs ineligible. So again, those checklist items, as a reminder, keep all records of all costs for audit purposes as well. So for, again, any labor charge to the grant, please maintain those timesheets. Keep all invoices and receipts and records. And again, see that grant administration guide for accounting requirements for additional guidance. So now that we've gone through all of the eligible costs and the ineligible costs, if we can go back to the grant scope cost estimate form, and that is on page 28. Okay, perfect. So this page includes information on how to establish your grant scope and provide that cost estimate summary. The instructions on this page will help applicants fill out the grant scope cost estimate form. So you'll see there for number 1, you will want to establish that grant scope. The form on the next page will be used to establish the expected deliverables for the activities described in grant selection 3 and 4. Use the form to list only the activities that will be funded by the grant plus committed funds if applicable during the grant performance period. Again, please do not include future costs beyond what the grant and committed funds will support during the grant performance period. Use the grant scope cost estimate form to provide the lump sum estimated cost of all activities consistent with your responses to that grant selection criteria 3 and 4. So for number 2, providing a cost estimate for the outdoor program. Again, please see that list of eligible costs that I just went over. That first bullet point, the total program cost must cover all the activities in the community and the natural area trips that are described in that grant selection number 3. Also, it asks you to total all of the costs. For contingency items, they can be folded into the line items. Please do not list contingency as a separate line item. We definitely understand that actual costs may change during the outdoor program. In most cases, a revised grant scope is not required when estimated costs fluctuate during the outdoor program. Again, we ask applicants to check the math and dollar amounts between all forms in the application to ensure that the grant request amount and the total program cost are consistent. So there's the instructions for filling out the grant scope cost estimate form. So if we can move to the next page, which is that page 29. Here you will see the actual form that I was describing the instructions for. So at the top there, you'll notice on the top left that it says activity in the community. And so in the columns below, list each activity, goal title, and the number of intended participants consistent with your response to that grant selection criteria 3. And so you will list the goal there, you'll list the participants, and then on the column on the right is the total cost for the activity in the community. Moving down, you'll notice it says nature area trip. And so again, in those boxes underneath there, we will be asking applicants to list the trip title, the destination, the number of participants, and then on the right-hand side to list the cost of those. Moving down the form, for number 1, you'll see there once you put all your costs in for the activities in the community and the nature area trips, you will add all of those up and you will put that total under number 1, where it says total cost of all activities in the community and nature area trips. For number 2, any internships from that grant selection criteria 4, if applicable, you will put the cost of those in that number 2 box. For number 3, any pre-award planning costs for planning the outdoor program. So again, this is only up to 5% of the requested grant amount. You will put in box 3. For box number 4, are any hazard and liability insurance premiums that will cover the outdoor program. We want you to list those in box number 4. And then finally, for number 5, we want you to add up all those costs. So add up 1 through 4, and you will get the total program cost for number 5. And then the last box there is what your requested grant amount will be. So it can, that can be the requested grant amount can be the total cost of the program, or if you have, it could be less than that if you have committed funds available as well. So I know that was a lot of information to take in, but that is the grant scope cost estimate form. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions about it. So if you have any, please put those in the chat feature. And before I move on to Kyle, Victor, do you want to answer any questions in the chat feature?
Thanks, Christine. I'm going to go through the questions. We've taken care of most of them, but I see a few more just recently came up. But one good question is about storage. After we've met with hundreds of people through focus groups and public hearings and prior workshops, that's the first time storage came up. So it's a great question. And the premise is that the purchase of equipment and supplies for the proposed activities during the grant performance period would be a more economical use of the state funds compared to rental of the supplies and equipment. But there is no place to store the supplies and equipment. So typically, storage units are found statewide, and I think they're normally about $200 per month or so. The golden rule, and this is a question that we've asked for 20 years during grants administration, is why is this cost necessary to achieve the grant deliverables? Why is this necessary to achieve the proposed outdoor program? So when you're thinking of unique costs, ask yourself that question: why is this necessary to achieve the program? Can I not achieve the program for the most economical use of state funds without this specific cost? And then you'll be able to discuss those unique situations with the grants administration team if the grant's awarded. So great question on storage. We are going to note that for our frequently asked questions documents, and we'll get back to you. But I think prepare to answer that question of why is the storage necessary to achieve the grant deliverables? Why is it necessary to achieve the proposed outdoor program? And is it a more cost-effective use of state funds, given that you'll be able to purchase and store versus rent the equipment or supplies? Okay, so great question. Thanks, Christine.
Thank you, Christine and Victor. Sam, if you could please turn to page 30 for the funding sources form instructions. Great, so page 30 provides instructions on how to fill out the funding sources form. And Sam, if you please turn to page, the next page. So here is the funding sources form on page 31. It is important to note that if your total program cost is more than your grant requests, this form is where you will list your funding sources. Limit the outdoor program to what can be accomplished with the grant and committed funds. Except for participant fees, additional funds must be secured no later than 3 months after the application deadline, if not yet committed at the time of application. If the grant is awarded, there will be no need for additional fundraising. The costs must be incurred before the final grant payment is processed. If funding sources change from the time of the application until the final grant payment, the applicant understands this form must be updated within 30 days. Sam, if you could please turn to page 32 for applicant capacity. Thank you. Here, applicants are asked to answer 4 questions regarding their capacity to achieve the outdoor program during the grant performance period and implement a plan for sustainable success. The applicant should respond to the following 4 areas to establish capacity. 1, previous experience with outdoor programs. 2, previous grant funding received. 3, previous or ongoing relationships with the residents or stakeholders near the community home base. And 4, whether or not permits are required and what the plan is to obtain them. Sam, if you could please turn to page 33 for the photos and copyright license agreement. Great. So this page provides information on completing the photos and copyright license agreement. It is optional for applicants to provide digital photos and videos. And Sam, if you turn to the next page, page 34, for the actual form. So this is the photo copyright license agreement form. It is important to note that this form does not need to be signed by the authorized representative. One form also does cover all photos and videos submitted. Sam, if you could please turn to page 35 for the reporting certification. Applicants should keep clear records for reporting requirements for AB 209, as Christine talked about earlier. To meet those requirements, grantees submit annually 5 listed reporting requirements shown here to the Office of Grants and Local Services through an online reporting system and before the final grant payment is approved. The online reporting system will be as user-friendly and efficient as possible. Our hope is that the data collected from grantees will inspire and inform future programs by sharing lessons learned statewide. Sam, if you could please turn to page 36 for the nonprofit requirements. Thank you. This page asks nonprofit applicants to provide information regarding IRS status and for their most recent filed federal 990 forms. The Office of Grants and Local Services may also need further documentation, and those items are listed so applicants can be prepared to provide them if necessary. If you got any questions, go ahead and put those in the chat feature. And before we move on to Christine, Victor, are there any questions you'd like to bring to the group's attention?
Yeah, so there's a couple good questions. One is from Luz, and she asked if someone will be available to answer questions in the future with like cost estimates, etc. And the answer is yes, absolutely. That will be available for you, and we'll post a link to our staff contacts in a few minutes, and also page 42 covers all the different forms of technical assistance we will provide in addition to these workshops. So Sam's showing you page 42. We'll get there in a few minutes. The other question from Claire is about the reporting requirements that Kyle just covered, and we're going to try to make these reporting requirements as user-friendly for you, and they are listed on page 35. But also, as Kyle mentioned, it's intended to to assist future program planners. You know, there may be quite a bit of grants that are awarded statewide, and there should be some great experiences and insight that all the grantees will be able to provide as they go through, you know, years of programming through this upcoming grant cycle. So, you know, item 5 on page 35 could become a very helpful resource for future agencies and organizations that are looking to, you know, provide similar activities and similar programs for Californians. So we look forward to your updates and your reports about what challenges you came across and what have you. The reporting. So there's 2 different types of reporting. One will be standard grants administration, which is just a progress report twice a year, and that will be done through our grants administration team. And then we are going to collect the data on page 35 before the final payment. So before your final payment's processed, you'll give us your final totals per the reporting requirements that Kyle just covered. Okay. Another question that just, well, let's continue right now. We'll continue answering your questions through chat, and then any other kind of like summary questions we'll provide answers in a few minutes as well. So thanks, everyone. I think Christine, you're up.
Perfect. Thanks, Vic and Kyle. So moving along here in the guide, we've previously discussed those pages 37 through 41. So now if you can turn to page 42. Perfect. And this lists technical assistance for applicants. And so this page summarizes the assistance available to applicants. And a couple of things on this page is that applicants have access to technical assistance provided by the competitive review project officers until the application due date. So please reach out to your project officers assigned to your county. We are here to help every step of the way. As a reminder, we will make an announcement when submittable. The online application system is open and applicants are able to upload their applications. Project officers can provide feedback on checklist items with the exception of project selection criteria number 2. If there are still incomplete items after the application deadline, project officers will work with applicants to determine timelines for those items. Again, please remember that we are here to help every step of the process. So please reach out to your project officers. At the bottom of this page is information regarding the Outdoor Recreation Leadership Training. The department's Office of Community Involvement offers interactive, hands-on training that equips adults with the skills and confidence to lead outdoor recreation activities with an emphasis on camping. This training is optional for grantees. Again, visit our website for more information. I will hand over the webinar to Cedric, who will speak a little bit more about this great program. So Cedric.
Thank you, Christine. The Outdoor Recreation Leadership Training Program is a 3-day, 2-night leadership training designed to equip adults with skills and the expertise in outdoor recreation. Participants will learn best practices in youth development and community building, all while camping in a beautiful California State Park. The training topics include outdoor recreation as a community building tool, community engagement strategies and implementing resources, networking, activity design in trip planning. We also work in how to work with diverse communities, establishing trust and team building techniques. We work on communication skills development. Once graduates finish with this program, once they graduate, they receive a 2-year certification from us. that allows them access to taking other camping trips through our award-winning FAM Camp program. Now, the Outdoor Recreation Leadership Program, as I said, is designed for professionals, volunteers, and community leaders to increase their resources related to their youth development and team building and community development strategies in outdoor recreation access. Before training, about 32% of our participants felt somewhat confident about taking groups to multiple day camping and outdoor recreation trips. After they graduated from the program, our surveys show that 81.5% of those who go through the program feel very confident in their ability to go out and work with groups. 98% of them said they felt motivated and inspired to try new things once they graduated from the program. So with outdoor recreation leadership, what we're recognizing is that you may be an organization that has not traditionally engaged in outdoor recreation as a part of the menu of things that you provide your clients. But this is a way in which you can gain some of those skills. And it will be, as I said, it's optional, but it is a program that we have been providing for more than 2 decades and have had a great deal of success from that. The other thing about this program is that once you graduate from the Outdoor Recreation Leadership Program, it entitles you to participate in our FAM Camp program. We certify you for 2 years. The FAM Camp program, we have a series of trailers in our state parks that have enough equipment to accommodate up to 30 people. It includes things such as sleeping bags and tents and sleeping bag liners and propane and camping stoves. It doesn't include pots and pans, and it doesn't include plates and the like, but enough equipment that you can have a camping trip that would accommodate, as I said, up to 30 people. The important thing about this program is that once you graduate from it and once you have access to it, it also provides a campsite, and it allows for groups to utilize the equipment when it's available for up to 2 years at no charge whatsoever. And you can use it as many times as you'd like. We've had 11 trailers throughout the state. They are in specific parks. You do not have to transport those trailers. It is essentially your group. You would come to the campsite. It would be available to you. We're in the process of inventory. Of course, COVID has, they have not been in operation for about 16 months. So we are looking to expand that program. We're looking at trying to move to coastal sites, and we're looking at expanding the program over the next few years in our state park system. If you have questions regarding that, we have posted our Office of Community Involvement's website. You can go there. Dolores Mejia is the manager of the Office of Community Involvement, and that team would be glad to answer any questions that you might have. We have some classes that are coming up. If you want to participate in the Outdoor Recreation Leadership Program, even before you decide whether or not you're going to apply for this for the OEP, you certainly may do so. We have classes coming up in August that you're more than welcome to participate in. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and Victor and I will be glad to answer them for you. Seeing that, I'll now turn it back over.
Thank you, Cedric. Natalie just posted a link to the website, as well as Dolores Mejia's email address, and that is, Natalie posted that at 11:46. So see Natalie's 11:46 a.m. post. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Cedric and Victor. So we've already covered pages 43 through 49, but as a reminder, these pages are additional guidance for the criteria section with ideas for applicants, which provides more in-depth technical assistance for each project selection criteria. Again, the criteria, which is found on pages 14 through 22. They include linked page numbers to the relevant technical assistance found in this section. So pages 50 through 54 contain definitions for all the words and terms that are in small caps throughout the guide. And so you can look at all of these definitions. And that this concludes the end of the OEP application guide portion of the webinar. So if you have any questions, please again put them in the chat feature. And now I will hand it back over to Victor.
Okay, thank you so much, Christine. So we had some good questions, like for example from Luce, and the question was, if we have more questions, who do we contact? And so Sam is currently showing you the program webpage, and we'll scroll down a bit. And before I go there, let me just backtrack a second here. This program website will go through substantial updates over the next few days through early next week. We are our department's going through a remediation check for accessibility. So all the documents that we've forwarded are currently being reviewed. So like there's been questions about the competitive chart, the grants administration guide, and those documents will be posted. Oh, fillable forms. Those documents will be posted once we can update our website after it goes through the remediation change. So I'm hopeful that all the updates will be made by next week. The grants administration guide will probably take a few more weeks before it becomes available. But we will send email updates to everyone that's RSVP'd to these webinars, as well as I think 5,000 contacts in our listserv. And you can, of course, just continue to, check the website for updates as well. So going back to Luce's question, what if I have questions in the future? And if you look towards the bottom of your screen on Sam's, where he's circling, where it says technical assistance contacts, there's a link for contacts based on the location of your community home base by county. Okay, so now you see a list of project officers by county. We have a list of contacts for your competitive pre-award application process, which is based on the application guide. And you'll see that's the green column. And then we have a contact. If your grant's awarded, your grant will be transferred to the grant administration project officer that will take you through the grants administration phase after awards. And again, awards should occur in spring of 2022. So your contacts right now will be the ones you'll use the left-hand column to find the county where your home base is, and then use the next column for your project officer. So for example, if your home base is in Alameda, you will contact Megan Harrison. Now, I'll say that emails are preferred right now because our team is, as Cedric mentioned, our team is really in the thick of a $2.4 billion review process for a Prop 68 program. And they are currently traveling statewide. So over the next few weeks, they are going to be mostly in the field traveling statewide through early August, but they are checking their emails periodically as well. I want to emphasize how helpful this team is. They take pride in being helpful. They are friendly people, so please take advantage and don't be shy of their assistance. Okay, they are here to help you, and the spirit that we try to maintain is that your success is critical for the success of this program. So we know that you have to be clear on the application process and the criteria, and the clearer you are, we hope that your programs will be more successful, and the grants administration phase will go successful as well. So again, we're here to help you. We will provide an update to the grants performance period, but here's the next steps. The application deadline will be this October 8th. We'll have an online application system available for you by early August. So starting early August, you'll be able to start preparing your applications online. The grant awards will take place in spring of 2022. And you'll have approximately 3 years to conduct your programs if the grants are awarded. And this is for the full $57 million this round. So we are very excited that $38 million has been added to this cycle. And we look forward to your applications. So thank you very much. Our Deputy Director, Cedric Mitchell, will provide some final thoughts for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor, and thank you all for being here. I know, the work that you all do is incredibly important to our society, and it often goes unnoticed. But you don't do it necessarily for the praise that comes along with it. What we do when we're serving the public is do it because it's in their interests, and our goal is always trying to figure out how we can improve the quality of life for people we serve. The important thing to note, though, is I just wanted to take a minute to thank you for the work that you do and that you have been doing over time. Those public agencies and nonprofits that have been silently and during the crisis that we've had been there for the communities, on behalf of the state, I just want to say thank you for that. And then I'd also like to just reiterate a couple of things. As we know, money to operate programs coming from a public agency is not very often. It hasn't happened very often. This is really a unique opportunity for us as a state to do something that leads the rest of the nation. And so as you see the things we're asking for, we know we ask a lot of you, but what we are willing to do is give a lot of ourselves to make that partnership work. We also recognize that it's not just about money flowing out and us doing business as usual. This is an opportunity for all of us collectively to do what we do and raise it to a higher level. It's the opportunity for us to dream beyond what we may have thought we could, and the opportunity to create something unique and powerful for California. What we do know is that the solution isn't going to be one answer, but multiple answers, multiple organizations doing a wide variety of things that meet the unique needs of the people that we serve. So we're preparing with this program to see how we can move everything to a higher level, how we can possibly, at some point in time, stop the conversation about access and stop the conversation about equity and let it become a normal part of our existence. We can't keep handing down from one generation to the next the need for these kinds of services. What we have an opportunity in our generation to do is make transformative efforts to change the way in which communities are going to engage and operate. We really have the opportunity to empower communities to do something extraordinary that the rest of this nation can follow. The important thing to also note is that a whole lot of eyes are going to be looking our direction. We have $57 million that we can do something extraordinary with, and then evaluate that in such a way that it shows that investing in people and investing in communities and empowering communities is the most economical and most powerful way in which we can move towards social equity. This is not just about moving people around. This is about taking giant steps towards equity in our society. This is about empowerment and engagement. It is clearly an effort on the part of both public and private agencies to say, this is our moment in time. I encourage you all to seize that moment and take every opportunity to take advantage of the resources that we will provide and that we will be in this partnership over the next few years. We want you to ask for what you need, and we want to be able to support you through the effort of providing that program. On behalf of the team, it's been a pleasure having you all here. It's been an honor. We're going to stick around for a few minutes and go live in our mics so you can unmute and you can you show us your video if you choose, but we'd like for you to ask questions directly to us and we'll stick around and answer those for you. We'll also continue to take information in the chat, and we'll be able to provide answers to you verbally. But it, again, has been a pleasure having you all here. We want this program to be extraordinarily competitive. We want to show the need that is out there, and then we want to show what all of us collectively are capable of doing here in California. On that note, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to ask Victor to come back up. We're going to go live, and if you want to stick around, we'll answer any questions you might have. And thank you again for all the work that you're doing. We look forward to your participation. Good afternoon. Victor?
Thank you, Cedric. Okay, so at this point, if you still have questions, you can, there's two ways you can ask your question. One is to raise your hand. Sam will show you where the hand symbol is found on your toolbar, and we'll try to call you in the order of which your hands are raised, and you can just unmute yourself with the microphone symbol. So Sam will show you where both of those are available on your toolbar. Okay, so there's the hand symbol. It says raise hand, and then when we call on you, you can click your microphone symbol, and that will unmute yourself. Or you can just go ahead and post your questions in the chat feature, and we'll answer that way as well. Okay, so go ahead, Natalie, if you could please monitor the who's raising their hands, and then I'll keep an eye on the chat on the chat feature. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Luz, you're up. I see your hand is raised. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Oh, thank you. I'm mostly a Zoom user, so I didn't know if I would know how to unmute myself, but I think I figured it out. You mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that one-year programs would be most competitive. I think you called it multi-touch programs. And is the team envisioning multi-touch one-year programs for the same group of people? So the same group of people have the opportunity to experience multiple facets of the program, or are you envisioning different cohorts so more people have access to the same content?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when Cedric mentioned multi-touch in 1 year, it's really at least 1 year. I mean, you can go, you can plan for up to 3 years or so. So that's the first thing versus just a single one-day event. Now, in regards to your second question, it can be a bit of both. You can have a core group of participants that will go through an entire, training process or an entire leadership development process, for example. And I can just give you a quick example of like we've seen programs where a core group of youth become like a leadership council, and they're responsible for, outreach and engaging younger children or their peers throughout the process. And that's a really good way to develop leadership, for example. And that may be, 5 or 10 youth, for example. And then you can also plan a series of activities for different age groups. So if you go back to criteria number 3, that is actually the intent of the program is to, you have the flexibility to involve different age groups for different activities and different trips. So one question we had is, can we send a group of youth to a camping program? Because we do know a lot of kids go through K through 12 and they never get to go camping. So that's absolutely one example where you could get a group of youth to go to a camping program. And then another trip to a natural area could be for families or for elders, seniors, older adults. So you can really mix and match. But the key thing is within what you do, you want to, definitely emphasize serving youth as a core part of your program, but then also work in some activities in the community, at least one activity in the community, and at least one natural area trip to serve other age groups like families, seniors, or other older adults.
Can Can I add to that, Victor?
Yes. Yes.
One
Please.
of the things that when we're loose, what we're talking about is not just one and done type trips. So if you have multiple contact with people, the opportunity for them to develop that outdoor ethos is strengthened. The opportunity to develop and empower them so that they can serve within community when our programs are over is greater. And the opportunity to have a lifelong affinity with nature increases with each time that they have the opportunity to participate. So you can have multiple cohorts, but you can have a program that lasts for X period of time, and then you start a new cohort. That is something that you can do. So it's really moving away from this notion that just loading up, 100 people in buses and taking them out for the day and bringing them back home and never seeing them again is solutive for this program. It's not. We know from all the work that we've been doing over the years that those multiple touches, those multiple opportunities are the ones that are long-lived and tend to be the most effective. So it moves us away from this idea of just counting heads and counting people and making it as a success. Instead, we're saying, what is the value of the experience that people are having? How is it connectively, how are they connecting with that? And what is the actual transformative experience that people are having that goes beyond the actual activity itself? Is that helpful?
That is so helpful. And I was hoping that was your answer, to be quite frank, because being part of both spectrums, underserved communities, growing up really poor, I do remember really meaningful experiences, but just this touch and go, as you described, is not transformative. And so I was hoping that there was space for a longer amount of time with the same individuals, which you've expressed there is. Thank you so much. It is very helpful.
All right, thank you for the question. So it looks like we have Donna up next. And I also want to mention, for those of you that are on the phone, you may not have the ability to have a raised hand feature. So if you're on the phone, just go ahead and you can hit *6. That will unmute yourself, and it's going to take a few seconds to actually get the connection through. Just want to warn you, there's going to be a slight delay. If you're on the phone, you hit *6 to unmute yourself. But right now, we're going to toss it over to Donna. Go ahead, Donna.
Oh, hi. Thank you so much. I so appreciate being able to be part of this conversation. And a lot of it, what I'm excited about is the work is really similar to some like a pilot project that we have started at Point Reyes National Seashore. But as I think about it, and really in terms of the funding that we've received to do these community work with community partners to connect them to their national seashore in really these multiple touch ways, we're at a space where we are at a size that with our current capacity, we can definitely do what we're doing. But with the type of funding that you're offering, and it's a short term, even though it's a long term, it's up to 3 years. It's 3 years. The idea of building out the capacity of an organization to do more in this area is very exciting. But I'm thinking about what comes next, and if your group has thought about that capacity for organizations to build this out without a promise of funding after 3 years.
Yeah, so I'll answer part of the question, and then Cedric may have some additional thoughts. So unfortunately, we are, these grant programs, are made available through the state budget. So, there's no additional funding currently available beyond the $57 million. But as you've noted, the $57 million with the potential of receiving up to $700,000 per grant award is pretty substantial for this type of program. So it is a great opportunity. But in terms of building capacity, I think one of the things that we are excited about is that, even though reporting itself sounds dry, we're hopeful that the reporting is going to come alive, where grantees that go through some challenges during the 3 years and run into some unforeseen challenges and find a way to either navigate through it or learn from other experiences, we can really help build a great statewide inventory of experience that's gained through these 3 years. So if additional funding becomes available, whether it's through our department, our office, or other funders, there's at least going to be a really good collection of experience that can help shape future capacity. Cedric, do you have more to add?
Certainly. So that's a very good question. And one of the reasons that we're requiring the home base as an example is that you tend to build some ability to build capacity, not necessarily within organizations, but within the community itself.
Mhm.
And so by doing that, what we find is that when people have a passion for something, regardless of where their income levels are, we find that they will combine resources to continue to, gain access. And I'll give you an example. We noticed in our soccer program that we needed to have soccer fields in some of the urban areas that they just didn't have fields. They were not available. And yet soccer was thriving and the need for more soccer fields was clearly needed in the community. What we found is that people were actually having to go an hour to go to simply participate in soccer games. They weren't able to get on public transportation because it wasn't available for them, but yet it seemed to be a thriving thing. And what we found in talking with people also is that people would come together and they would get in their vans or get in their cars and carpool and go to where they need to go because it was an important part of their family structure and of their community. One of the things that we noticed is that this idea that nature is accessible to everyone isn't necessarily aware for everyone. So what we find, and through programming that we've done, what we find is that if it becomes a value, then the barriers to transportation become a little bit less because the community comes together.
Mhm.
We have a program for youth that is our Outdoor Youth Connection program. We've served over 3,000 youth. We do not provide transportation to get there. But what we found is that all of the organizations that we work with have figured out how to make certain that they could get there. We've seen parents commute to get there with their carpool. We provide the services when they're all there, but the value is something that we're trying to get people to appreciate and have. And the more we can do that, doesn't solve all problems, but what it does do is give people the opportunity to access what they do have available to them. And then the desire to go to farther spaces becomes something that becomes a community concern. And as we know, when people come together, we can build that capacity. And it's not going to say that it solves all issues, but we can have a greater capacity at that point than we may have had in the before. So it's another step in the right direction, another step towards, allowing for people to have the experience of the magic of what nature can do, the healing experiences and all of that collectively can be done. And capacity development has to be our ability to, at some point, as organizations, not need to be relevant for them to come to us or go through us to gain that access. Absent of tons and tons of money, which we just don't have as a nation, but absent of that, then the responsibility has to fall on all of us empowering people to make those decisions and then supporting them in those decisions. That's why community home base is so critically important. That's why organizations coming into community and providing not only services that share what is around them, but giving them the opportunity to also experience these new experiences on farther away experiences are critically important. So it gets away from this notion that you have to the only way that you can enjoy nature and enjoy these places is if you have to have a go-between in order to make that happen for you. That our success ultimately will be if a person can access what is rightfully theirs on their own, then we have been extraordinarily successful. But if we create a dependency, then all we've done is further the discussion of social inequity. And that's something that we just can't pass down from generation to generation. So I could go on, but this will give you an idea of our thinking based on the hundreds of people we've talked to, and literally the thousands of folks and applications that we have seen, and going into community and working and sitting around campfires and talking to folks. This is where we've come to the conclusion that this money can be extraordinarily transformative.
Thank you. And we're very excited about it, and definitely see that that partnership model of public land managers and really partnering with working in a variety of communities. So we're really excited that this opportunity has come up. Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Donna. Is there any other questions that we have? Just go ahead and raise your hand, or if you're on the phone, unmute yourself by dialing *6.
Okay, we will hang out for about 1 more minute, and if there's no additional questions, we will stop the recording and end today's workshop. This workshop will be posted online as well for future reference. And thanks again, everyone, for your interest. Okay, great. Looks like no more questions. Thanks again. Team, you can go ahead and start closing the webinar. Go ahead and stop the recording, and we'll just